Let us see now what we will be learning in our module 2, and in this particular module we will be learning about the variables, data types, null safety, type conversions, as well as the operators. So it will be a really interesting topic or the module where we will learn a lot of the basic concepts regarding the programming, and this will be useful for any other programming language that you learn, right? So this is the base that we need to pick up, and if you pick up this one, it will be really easy to learn any other programming language. So let us get started with our module 2 over here. Before we start this video, a small and a humble request from my side. Only a small percentage of people watching this video are actually subscribed to my channel. So if you like this kind of content that I'm creating, please make sure to hit the subscribe button or join my community over here. It really helps my channel and me to grow, and it also encourages me to create more content for my YouTube channel. So let us get started over here. Let me open up my VS Code over here, and in the VS Code I have added a module 2 and a readme.md file over here. This is a module 2 with a Dart fundamentals over here. Let us get started with the variables. So what actually are the variables over here? So let's take a look into the explanation that I have added over here. Variables are the container for storing or data value. So let's take an example of one of the image over here. Let's say you create a variable of the a, which is a type which of the int, and the value that you have assigned, which is by using a equals to sign over here, equals to 5. That basically means that you have assigned a value of 5 to a variable a. So you created a variable a and you added a value or assigned a value of a 5, and that is stored in a memory location. So each memory location where you can store a value, and it basically means that you have a box which is a space in a memory. Like let's say you have a big cupboard and you have a lot of the boxes to store all of your objects. So let's say you have a box to store your shoes, you have a box to store your clothes, right? So we have a lot of these boxes or a memory location in a computer where we can store a value, right? Then you can add a type of that particular value. Let's say you add a type of the int, you can add a type of the bool, you can add a type of the number, you can add a type of the string, right? So each box you define what kind of the object that you want to store in that particular box. So in computer we have a memory location like this particular box over here, and then in that particular box what you want to store a value, and that value has a certain type. It may be of integer, it may be of the string, it may be of the boolean, and so on, right? So just think it as a box or a location in a computer memory where you can store a certain type of the value. So let's go back over here, and you will see that the Dart is a strongly typed language, which means that the variable have a specific type. So as we just saw over there in the image that we have just saw, that we can create a variable with a certain type over here, which helps to prevent error and make your code more predictable. And let's open up over here again, and you'll see that the Dart is a strongly typed language. So once we create a variable, we assign a type for that particular variable. So it can be, we can assign an int for a and the value of the 5 that is stored in one of the box in our computer memory. So that is how we can see the how we can define our variables in a computer over here. And now let's go and let's try to see how we can create our variables for the data type of the numbers. And in the number data type we have the int, double, and then the num. So int is used for a whole number, right? It's used for the whole number. and the double is used for a floating point. The whole number basically means that it doesn't have a floating point like the 1.5, right, or 2.0, right? It doesn't have a floating point, whereas the double, where we can store a floating point or a decimal value, like a price of shoes can be of the 10.5, right? So it has the decimal value over there. And with the number type, we can, it's an abstract class, right, that is a super type of both int and double. So the num type is basically the super type for both integer type as well as the double type. Use num if you don't care whether the number is an integer or a double. So if you don't care whether the value can be of the integer type or a double type, then we can make use of the number. So let's see how we can create those over here. In the module 2, I'll create a new file. Let's create the variable and the data type dot file over here, and let's create our void main function over here, main function. And I have already explained about the main function in our previous lesson. Let's create our first type, which is of the type is of our numbers over here. And in the number type, we first have the int type, which is of, let's say, a1, which is of equals to a value of a 10. So we create our variable of the a, or let's give a age over here, age of a 10. So this is a variable name, and then the value that we have assigned with the help of the equals to sign over here is the 10. So now the value of age is of 10, and it is the type of this particular variable is a int over here. Now let's try to go and print out this one, and we'll see. Let's go and print out the age over here, and we need to close tab, and let's try to go and run this one, and we'll see that the value for the age is a 10 over here. Now let's create the another one over here, which is of the double over here. The type is of the double, and I'll just go and say the price over here, pri, see price, which is of equals to 20.23. let's try to go and print out this one over here, and with the I'll go and print the price over here. Let's try to go and run this one. You'll see that the price is of the 2.23 over here. So this is the type is of our integer over here, integer integer, and this is the type is of the double over here, and both of those are the number type. And next we will have the type is of the num, and then let's say this is the num1, and it can have any type, whether it can have int or it can also have the double type. So I'll just go and say a value of the 30 over here, and I'll also create the num, let's say a num2, which is of equals to the I'll just going to say 40.7 over here. And if I go and print out this one over here, let's go and print the num1 over here, and also print our num2 over here. Let's go and run our program. You'll see that we have the 30 and then the 40.70. So basically a num can hold both integer value as well as it can hold a double value. Let's say if you have an int, and if you try to assign a double value, let's say of 50, then you will see that it's going to give you an error because the int type cannot hold a decimal value, right? So if you go and read this here over here, used for a whole number, so it's only used for a whole number, and double is used for the floating point number or a number with a decimal point over here. So let's just go and remove this one from here, which is of the dot or 0.50 over here. Whereas if you can just go and say that the double price is equals to 20, right? And if you try to run this one, you will see that the value is actually the 20 dot over here. Even if you don't define the point or the decimal point over here or the decimal value over here, by default it always has the dot o over here or the dot 0, which is of the decimal point over here. So even if you don't put that the decimal value, it has always the type which always has a decimal value. So this is all of our num type, and if you want to check the num over here, if you just hover it over here, it's a silk class which implements a comparable of the num, right? So if you go and take a look, and if you go and open up this one, you'll see that is a silk type of the silk class with the num implements a comparable, right? And it has the int and then the double. And if you go back to the built-in number types over here, just go and read this particular documentation if you want to understand more. So let's just go back to our int, and you will see that it's an abstract final class of int which extends the number class that we have defined over. So number class, so if you go to the number, it's a number, it's a sealed class that is defined. So every number that we have, in whether it's the integer type or whether it's the double type, it's extending from the number type. So it's the parent class for our integer and double is a num, right? And the double and then the int are the subclass of the number type over here, right? So number is also a sealed class which implements a comparable. So I hope you got the idea. So when to use the int, when to use a double, and when to use a num. Use an int if you know that it's not going to hold any decimal or the floating point, and always use a double if the value is going to have some decimal point, and use a number or the num type if you want to hold any of those, whether int or the double. So if you want to hold both of these, you can add or you can make use of the num type. Now let's go back to the readme file over here. Next we'll learn about the string, which is a text used for a sequence of the character. Basically a string is just a sequence of characters. So character basically means C is a character, H is a character, right? So the string is just a sequence of the character. We can also call it as a text over here. Strings can be defined using a single quote, right? You can define with this type of the single quote or using a double quote. So both of those, single quote and double quote, is supported in the Dart over here. You can make use of the single quote or the double quote depending on your requirement. However, there are certain differences in the single quote and double quote. Later we'll see the differences. And we also have the multi-line strings that can be created using a triple quote. So using a single triple quote or the single double triple quote over here, you can create a multi-line string. And you can also have the string interpolation, which means that in a string you can add or you can access all the variables, right? Or you can write some expression or you can access some variables using a string interpolation, which you need to define using this one. I guess it's a backtick or some keyboard, but using this one we can access the variable as well as we can write the expression over there. So let's go and see how we can do that one. So let's just go back to our variables and the data types over here, and let's go and add our strings over here, right? So this is the strings, and let me just go and format it a bit over here. And now let's just go and create our first string, which is of the name, and the name will be, for this one, will be of the Richard over here. And I can just go and print out this one over here, and I'll just go and print the name over here. Let's just go and print this one, and let's try to run now. And now we got that particular string name. And this is a double quote, but we can also do a single quote, right? So let's say a name single quote code over here, and now I can have a double quote, which is of the name doubl double quote over here, or single quote and then the double quote. So let's say we have a single quote over here. So let's just go and remove this one, and let's add a single quote over here. So now name in a single quote, as well as we have the name in the double quote. And let's try to run this one now, and you'll see that it's printing. Okay, so now let's try to go and add a value, like let's see 1, and then this is for the 2, so we can see the 2 print out over there, otherwise it's going to overlap. So now we got that, and you can see that it supports both the single quote as well as the double quote over here. And now if you want to go and add this something like multi-line text over here, so let's just go and add a multi-line over here. So let me just go and create a new variable of the string, and I'll just call it as a multi-line string over here. And let's just go, okay, so I have a multi-line string over here, which is of equals to, let's go and assign using either a single triple quote or using a double quote or triple double quote over here. So let's try to go and copy this, and let me just go and paste it below. And this is of the multi-line string 1 over here, and I'll just go and give it as name as a 2. So here we will define with a triple quote over here. Let me just go and close it over here, right? And let's just go and add some value over here. So this each multi line string over here, and it preserves the line break over here, and that's good. So let me just go and copy this and also paste it below over here. And this is a multi-line string, and I'll just go and say with a double quote over here. And let me just go and print out this one over here, the print with our multi-line string 1, as well as we are going to print out the, just go and add that and copy this and paste it over here. Okay, so I added 2 over there. Let's just go and run this one from here, and you will see that we got that. So now this is a multi-line string, it preserves a line break over here, and you will see that it has the line break automatically added for us. This line is a multi-line string with a double quote, and it preserves the line break. So you will see that here it preserves the line break. I guess we printed the same thing 2 times over here. Okay, so I guess that's the fine. So now you can see how we can add a multi-line string over here, as well as it supports the single quote as well as the double quote. And now let's look into the string interpolation over here. That is, let's just go and say the string, and I'll just go and say the some string value over here, and here we are going to make use of the single quote over here, the sum, right? Let's say the sum of nums, and I'll just go and add the sum of nums, and I'll just go and add the value of the age that we have defined, right? So then sum of the num age, each of equals to, and I'm going to add some expression over here, age minus 1 over here, right? And that's how we can add the variable, access the variable, as well as we can write the expression in the string. So we can do the same thing with the, let's say this is of the 1 and this is of the 2 over here, and this is for the double code, as well as we have the single code. And let's try to go and run this particular program over here, and you will see that, let's just go and see where, okay, so we haven't print out that. Let me just go and print out our some string value 1, and also let's go and print out the sum string value of the 2 over here. And now we can just go and rerun that, and you will see that the sum of the num is equals to be 9, and I'll just guess this is of the 2, and this one okay, so that's the expression. Actually we should not add it inside the expression but outside of this one over here. Let's say I'll just go and see the dash 1 or something, so dash 2 over here, and we'll try to rerun this one. You'll see that this is the sum of the num is of the 10 and it equals to 9. That is what we have. The age minus 1 is 9, right? So that is how we can use the expression as well as access the variables over here. And I have mentioned over there there's some slight difference on using the single quote and double quote. Let's see if I want to add the s over here. You will see that we are going to get an error over there, and obviously if we use a nums over here, apostrophe s over here, that's giving that's perfectly fine. It doesn't give us any error. But whereas here, if you try to access or use the apostrophe s over here, it's going to give us an error, which basically means that you have already closed your string over here, and now this is the extra string that you have actually added over there. So it's going to give us, because you need to go and actually close that one as well, right? So that's how it's going to work over here. And you can fix this one by just adding this particular slash over here. Now that should be same as how it was previously, right? So now it adds the apostrophe s over here. So if you have a lot of the apostrophe or s over there, right, then you can obviously make use of the double quote, which I guess is much more easier to make use, and otherwise you can normally use a single quote as well. And now let's go back to the readme over here, and let's look into the booleans over here, the type each of the bool over here, and it's used for the true or false value. So if you have a condition, it's a true or the false, then we will make use of the booleans, and can be true or a false. The value can be always a true or the false. So let's go and see how we can make use of this data type over here, and let's just go and say this is of the booleans booleans, right? And let me just go and format a bit over here just to look it a bit nicer over here, and let's say bool over here. The type is of the bool, and I'll just go and say each active which will be of the true, right? So tru true in the lowercase, and I'll just go and say bool. I'll just go and say the each valid, so valid valid which is of the false over here. So now the boolean type, each active or each valid, it has the true or the false over here. So let's just go and print out this one over here. So go and print, and I'll just go and say each, okay, so let's just use each user ACTI active, and I'll just go and access that particular the variables over here, or the variable over here, and let's also say the each user valid over here, and let's just go and access that one. So it's really simple. For the boolean, it can only have a true or the false value. If you go and run this one, we should see that the user active. Okay, so we have the user each should be of the user each. So user each active or the false, right? So valid is false and active is the true. That is what we have defined over here. And now let's go back over to readme file and let's look into the dynamic type over here, which is of a flexible type. We can also call it as a flexible type, the type that can hold any value. So if you have a requirement where you want to store any kind of the value, whether it's a boolean, whether it's a string, number type, right? So you can make use of the dynamic type over here. Using a dynamic bypasses the dot type checking at compile time, differing into the runtime. Use it sparingly as it can lead to runtime error. So they have given you a warning over here. Basically means that use it cautiously, right? Don't overuse it, only use it where it is absolutely necessary. Otherwise always prefer a strict type, right? So which the compiler can check a type at a compile time, so you don't get an error at a runtime. So using a dynamic type, it should be avoided as much as possible. But if you don't have any option, then only go and make use of the dynamic type. It's really not a good programming practice to make use of the dynamic type, but there are certain cases where it has some exception. We will be, once we learn about the map, right, once we learn about the collection type, where we will see how to make use of the dynamic type over there. So let's just go and create some dynamic type variables over here, and that will be of, let's just go and say the dynamic or the dynamic. And now let's just go and add a dynamic variable over here, dynamic 1, and I'll just go and assign a name each Richard over here, so it can have a string type. Similarly, I will just go and say the dynamic 1, which can be of equals to, I'll just go and 10.20 over here. So now it's a, you will see that it's a dynamic type, but now the value it's holding is the double type. I can also see our dynamic type 1, which is of equals to the true over here, right? And now I'll just go and print out this one and print out our dynamic type 1 over here. And let's try to go and run this particular program over here. We'll see that it's a true, right? So that's what we have defined over here. And if you try to go and run the each of those over here, so let's just go and copy this over here, and it's, let's just go and print out over here, here, and here, I guess, and let's just go and remove that. And now if I go and rerun this one, you'll see that it's also fine to hold a string, it's also fine to hold a number, and also fine to hold a boolean type. So using a dynamic type, we can, it's a flexible enough, so you can either store an integer, boolean, string, it doesn't matter, it can hold any of the data type. So as I mentioned previously, you should use it cautiously and do not try to overuse it, right? It's not a good practice in any of the programming where you make use a lot of the dynamic type, right? It can create a lot of the bug in your application. And now let's look into the another type over here, which is of the object over here. It's a base class for all Dart objects. So the object is basically a base class or the super class for all of our Dart object. Any object that you have in the Dart is basically each an object. It has the it has the parent class of that object. It's always the object type over here. So let's just go and see the all dot object are instance of the class that inherits from the object. So all dot object are instance of the class that inherits from the object, and you can declare a variable of the object to hold any dot object. So if you want to hold any dot object, then you can make use of the variable type which of the object, similar to the dynamic but with some compile time check. So it's similar to the dynamic type that we just saw, but it has some compile time check. So let's go and see how we can make use of the object type over here. So let's just go and say the obj city object type over here, and let's see, I'll just go and print type is of the object over here, and I'll just obj1 which is of equals to the, I'll just go and say I am an object. So let's just go and type the type. For now this is, I have assigned a string, and I'll just go and print out this one. Let's just go and print out, and I'll just go and print the obj1 over here, and let's just go and also copy this one over here, and I'll just go and say object type obj2, and I'll just go and say this is of the 50.2 over here, which is now holding a decimal or the double type over here, and I'll just go and copy this and paste it over here. Let's just go and run this one. Now you will see that it can have the string type as well as it can hold the double type over here. If you go to the object over here, you'll see that this is a class actually, right? And if you read the documentation over here, it says the base class for all dot object except for the null, right? Basically it's a base class for all of the dot object type, whether it's a string, integer, number, any of the object that you have in the dot, the base class for that is always the object over here. And because the object is a root of the non-nullable dot class hierarchy, so any other object which is non-nullable, right, so it's not a null, every non-nullable dot class hierarchy, right, it's a root, and every other non-null dot class is a subclass of the object. Next we need to learn about the var and the type inference over here. So when you declare a variable with the var keyword, dot infers the type based on the initial value assigned to it. So whenever you create a variable using the var keyword and assign a value, let's say you assign a value of a string, and it's automatically type infer will automatically set the type for that one as a string type. Once the type is inferred, it cannot be changed. So let's go back to some practical over here, and I'll just go and say I'll make use of the var keyword. In the other programming language, you'll also see this particular var keyword, especially in the Java. Previously we used a lot of the var, but now it's a let over there, right? So let's add the var variable type over here with the infere, the inferred over here, right? So infere, the inferred over here, which is of, I'll just go and say string, and I'll go and say I am of string over here. And now if I go and print out this one, right, inferred string over here, and this is the type of the string. Now you can see the type has been automatically assigned as a string over here. And now if I go and try to assign a different value over here, let's say I'm going to assign a string over int over here, you are going to see that it gives me an error. A value type of int can't be assigned to a value type of string, because once the value is assigned, at that time the type inference will automatically assign a type for the var type over here, which is of this one. And similarly, if I try to go and have the inferred
int over here, and if I try to go and assign the 12 over here, sorry, I need to add this one as a var keyword. And if I try to go and print out this one, infer, the inferred int over here, and that's going to have the type of the int. And if I go and assign a value for this one to be of the string, some string over here, then it's going to give me an error. So type inference automatically assigns a type to our variable, or the var variable that we have defined. So you don't have to go and write a type is of the string, and this is the type is of the int, right? If you don't want to do that, you can obviously go and just make use of the var keyword, and then the type inference is going to automatically assign a type for you at the time once you initialize a value for that one. It's good if you want to go and make use of the strictly type, like this is of the int, right, and this is of the string. But if you want to make use of the var, you still can, and then that will automatically assign a type based on the value that you have assigned over here. And let me add the comment over here. So let's just go and add the comment of, okay, so I need to add a comment over here. This is going to be of the type, right? So type infer, and type reference over here, and it's good. So once you make use of the var, it can be useful, as well as it sometimes it can be a troublesome over here. So use it cautiously, right? And sometimes it can improve the readability of your code. Sometimes it doesn't improve the readability of your code. So if you think that it's best to make use of the var, then obviously you can just go and make use of the var keyword or the type inference over here. Let's go back to the readme over here, and next we are going to learn about the final versus the const over here, which is the immutability over here. Final, or variable declared with the final, can only be set once. Its value is determined at runtime, but once assigned it cannot be changed. And then the const, a variable declared with the const must be a compile time const. This means its value must be known at the compile time. Const variable are implicitly final, so const is implicitly final as well, and one is of the compile time const, and another one is actually a runtime. So it's a runtime, right? So it's a runtime, and one is of a compile time. So let's try to go and make use of the final and the const in practical way. And let's try to, okay, so let's try to go and comment out this one as well over here, and let's try to go and add some. Okay, so let's go and say a final, and I'll just go and say the type is of the string, and then the final name over here, and I'm going to add a name for this one over here. And okay, so I need to remove the dot from here. And next, if I go and try to assign a value for this one again, and I'm going to call this one something this, and let's try to go and final name can only be set once, right? And this is what we are getting over here. So if I try to go and set this one multiple times, it's not going to allow me over here. This is an error over here, right? This will give me an error over here. And let's add one more example. Let's say a final, and if I go say the time now, right? So time now, which will be of equals to the date time dot now, which is going to give me a current date and time for once the code is running. So if I try to go and print out this one over here, let's try to go and print the time now over here. and let's try to go and run this particular program, and you'll see we get a date and time of the now. So it's the runtime, right? So in the runtime, once the application is running, you are getting the date and time over there. Or what you can also do is, let's try to go and create a function that's going to return the return a name. So let's say return a name from here, and it's going to return from me return something like the string value from here. And I'm trying to go and get that final value, which is of the let's say get the name, and that's going to call this particular function over there. So let's go and call this one. That's going to be okay because it's a runtime. So final is a runtime, so whatever it's returning from me, I'm going to get it at a runtime, which means once the program is running, once the program executes, then I'm going to grab that particular value. That's perfectly fine with the final. Now let's take a look with the constant value over here. So const, and I'm trying to go and say val age, which is of equals to of the 20 over here. And similarly, like the final, we cannot go and reassign the value for this one. It's going to give me an error, right? Constant variable cannot be reassigned. So that's the error over here. And now let's try to see if it supports the runtime value. So if I copy this one over here, so let me copy this one as well, and if I try to go and paste it below over here, you will see that it doesn't support the runtime value as well. So even with the date and time, if you want to, okay, not this one, it should be of the const over here, const time now 1. Let me try to see, and now you'll see that get name 1 over here. It's giving me an error also for this one, const, right? It's giving me a constructor being called isn't a const constructor, and the method isn't invoked in a const expression. So which means that the const, if you use a const keyword over here, the runtime value cannot be assigned to that particular variable. So that's the difference with the final and then the const over here. With the final, you can make use of the runtime value. You can get the value at the runtime once the application is running, but for the const, it should be a compile time. So it's the runtime. So you are getting the value at the runtime. You are getting the value at the runtime. That is not allowed with the const variable over here. So I hope you got the idea about the const and then the final type or the final variable over here. So let's just go and print out the get name as well, and I'm going to print out this one as well. So let's go and print out our val age over here, and that should be fine. Now let's go back to the readme file, and next we are going to learn about the operators. So let's go and create the new file over here, and let's add the operators.the file over here, and let's take a look in the operators, the arithmetic over here. So let's see what's an operator. Operators are a special symbol that perform operation on one or more operands over here, or value or the variables, that provides a rich set of the operators for various purposes. First, we'll make use of the arithmetic operators like the plus, minus, multiply, division, integer division, as well as the module over here. So let's go and do some practical over here. First, let me create the main method over here, which is the entry point of our application. And here we are going to add our arithmetic operators. So first is the arithmetic operators, and let's just go and add that one over here. And let's create a variable of the int a, because we need a integer type to do some arithmetic operation. We cannot do that in a string. So let's go and say we have an a and then the b value of something like the 3 over here. Once we have the a and b, let's try to go and do some arithmetic operation. So in the arithmetic operator we have the plus first. So let's go and add the, let's just go and do the first one, which is of the add. And in the add, I'm going to add the a plus the b, right? So we have the a plus b, which will be of equals to the, we can make use of the string interpolation that we learned previously over here, right? We can write an expression as well over here. So expression will be of the a plus the b, right? So that is what we are going to grab, a plus the b over here. And let's just go and close this one over here, and let's try to run this one. You will see that a plus b is of the 13, and we'll do the same thing for the next, which is of the minus, right? So we have the minus, and let's try to go and subtract that value. Let's try to go and run. The a plus a minus b will be of equals to the 7 over here. And let's do the another one, which is of the multiplication. So let's just go and add the multiplication, a multiplied by b. Let's try to go and run this one. We got a 30. And then the next one, which is of the division. So let's just try to go and divide this one, a divided by the b over here. Let's run this one. We got the 3.33333, right? And next, let's just go and do the int, right? So this here, if we try to go and read this one, we have the integer division. So let's just copy this particular sign over here, and let's just go and add it over here, and we'll do the same thing over here. And if I try to go and run, this will give us an integer, right? Here it was giving me us the double the floating point, but here if you don't want a remainder, then you can make use of this, right, to or the integer division over here to get the integer value. And then finally we have one more, which is on the modulus. So let's just go and add that the over here. And okay, so once we got that, let's try to go and rerun our application. The remainder, the modulus will give us the remainder, the 3. What will be the remainder after it get divided? So 3 into 3 is 9, and the remainder is 1. That's why we are getting the remainder value of the 1 over here. And next, let's go back over here. Let's learn about the relationship operator. So first one is the equality operator, which is of equals to, whether we are going to check whether these value are equals, inequality, not equals, right, greater than, less than, greater than equals to, less than equals to. Let's take a look practically on the relation operators over here. So let's just go back to the operators, and let's add the relationship operators over here. First, we'll define an int x with the value of the 5, and also the int y, which is the value of the 10. So we have a x and y with the value of 5 and then the 10. So let's just go and print out this one over here. Print, right, the first value that we are going to take a look is the equality, right? So equals, and I'm going to make use of the x equals to y over here, whether is x is equals to y, and then we are going to make use of the string interpolation again over here, right? And then that will be of x is equals to y, whether it's true or the false. Let's try to go and run this one. It's going to give me x equals to y, which is of the false, which means that x is not equals to the y. These are both the different values. So if I go and set the value of the 10, that should give me a true, because x is now equals to the y over here. That is all about the equality. So we are going to check the equality over here. Equality. Next is not inequality, right? Not equals to. Let me just go and grab this one over here, and we are going to say this is of the not equals to, right? So not equals to, right? So not equals, it's going to give us the true because x is not equals to the y, right? It's give us the type is always the true or the false or the boolean type. Once you are checking that, right, it's always the true or false. It will be useful in the if or the switch condition, if condition, right? And now let's try to go and do the next one, which is of the greater, right? So let's just go and say this is the greater sign, and here we need to replace this with the greater sign. Let's run this one. X greater than y, false, because x is of the 5 and y is actually greater than the x over there. And the next one is the less than, right? And here we need to do the same thing. This is of the less than. Let's try to run this one. X is less than y, that's true, right? Next, let's just go and learn about the less than or the greater than equals to. Greater than equals to, whether it's equal or greater than. X is whether greater than or equals to of the y. Let's run this one. That's also the false, because x is not greater than y as well as it's not equals to y. If I say this is of the 10, then that should give me a true because it's also a equals to. Check whether it's a equal as well as greater than. So let's just go and set this one as a 5 over here. And next is less than equals to over here. So less than equals to, and here we are going to do the less than equals to as well. Let's try to run this one. That's will give you an true over here because x is of less than of the y over here. So these are the relational operators: the equality, inequality, greater than, less than, greater than equals to, as well as the less than or equals to over here. It will be really helpful to make use in the if or the if else condition, like you are checking for the certain condition, like if the age is greater than 18, then do certain thing. But currently we haven't learned all of those, right? So if else and all of those conditions we haven't learned, so that's why I'm not making use over here. Later, once we started learning about the conditions, loops, at that time we are going to make use of the relational operators over there. So now next is we are going to learn about the logical operator, which is the AND. Logical AND: true if both operands are true. Logical OR: true if at least one operand is true. And logical NOT: reverse the boolean value. So we are going to see practically. So let's just go back to our operators, and all this should be actually done with the conditions and then the loops. It will be much more easier to do over there, but let's try to learn in a simple way. First of all, we are going to create a boolean value over here because we require a bool value over here. One is of the, let's say it's sunny, and I'm going to say that is of the true. It's sunny, now it's a summer. So let's say next is, and I'll just go and say that it's of the false over here. So now we have a two boolean value. One is of it's sunny and one is of the it's warm over here. And let's try to go and make use of the print statement in the simple condition over here. And I'll just go say it's just use sunny over here. It's sunny. I'm going to make use of the AND operator, right? So AND. Okay, so I need to actually go and convert it as a string over here. It's sunny and it's warm. We are in warm over here. And once we have the it's sunny and it's warm over here, and we are going to add the string interpolation again, that is of the each sunny and each warm over here, each warm, right? And let's go and try to close it over here. Okay, it's not the closing point is here, we need to close it over here. And if I try to go and run this one, let's try to go and run this one, you'll see that the each sunny and each warm is false. Why it gives us the false? Because the true and false is always false. Is sunny, right, as well as is warm? No, both one is of the false. So true and false is always false, so it's giving us the false over here. Next we'll learn about the sunny, is sunny or condition over here, or is sunny or is warm, which basically checks if one of the condition or the one of the operand is true. The and the logical and always checks if both of the operand are true, whereas the or checks if only one of the operand is of the true, at least one, right? So here we have at least one true, so it should give us the true over there. Let's try to run this one. You'll see, okay, so here is the error that we missed. And so first is it's giving us the dead code. Let's try to go and try to run that one. So it's true, because at least one value should be of the true in the or condition over here. And here if I go and set it as the true over here, then that's going to give us the true as well, because both of the condition or the both of the operands should be of the true over here. If I go and run that one, it's giving us the true. So we have the true and then the false over here, right? And next is we need to learn about the not, right? So logical not, reverse the boolean value. So let's just go and add this one over here, not sunny. So let's say a not sunny, and just remove this part from here, not sunny, and I'm going to remove this one as well and add the not sunny over here. So it's going to reverse, right? It's mentioned that it's going to reverse over here. Let me try to go and run this one, give us the false. So it's always going to reverse that particular value. If it's a true, it will reverse that to false. If it is false, it's going to reverse back to the true over here. Next, let us go and learn about the assignment operator over here. And in the simple assignment, we have the equals to, which is going to assign our value, right, to our any of the variable that we create, or it assigns our value to left operand from the right one. And we also have the compound assignment operator, which is plus equals, which adds the value to that one, which the next one is the minus equals, multiply equals, divide, right? This is the integer division as well as the modulus over here. So all of those, the operator that we have actually make use over here, can also be mixed with our assignment operator, which is of the equals. So that is called the compound assignment operator, right? Let's try to go and see practically over here in our, let's try to go below this one, and here we'll create the assignment operator. So let's just copy this and paste it over here, and that will be of our assignment operators. Let's just go back and add that one over here. Let me just go and format it off over here. And now let's try to go and create the int value of which is of the 10. And now once we have the 10 value, let's try to go and print out the value of our initial value, which will be of equals to the our value of 10, right? So this will give us a 10. So initial value is always 10 over here. Now let's try to go and make use of some of the operand, right? So the simple assignment you should be already familiar, right? This is the one we are already doing that so lot already. Simple assignment over here. Now the value has the assigned a value of the 10, so this value is now assigned to this one, right? So that is what we have done previously. So we know already about the simple assignment, right? So whenever you make use of the equals to, it's going to assign a value from right to the left, right? And next we are going to learn about this one, the compound assignment operator. So let's try to go below this one, and let's try to, okay, so instead of printing that, I guess, okay, so let's try to go and assign a value for this particular value will be of, right? So the plus equals to the 5, so I'm adding, the plus is going to add a value of the 5 to this particular value. So this is the value after we have add the plus 5 over there. So let's just go and remove this, and let's try to print out this one over here again, and that's the value after 5 is of the 15 because it's added the value. So it's add and assign. And let's try to do the same thing, just copy this and let's just go and paste it below over here. That's the minus over here. We are going to use the minus over here, and let's try to go and run this one. So let's try to run, and you'll see that it's got the 5 back again because previously we had added the 5 back there. So similarly we can do the for the others, just copy this and paste it below. The next one is of the, I guess, the multiplication, right? Let's go and multiply this. Next is we are going to have the division, so divide over here, and let's just go and divide this one as well over here. And next is, let's just go down over here, and we have the integer division as well over here. I guess the integer division, okay, so we got some errors over here. Let's try to see what went wrong. So the integer division, okay, this is the sign that we actually need over here. I guess we did it opposite over there, right? So that's okay. And here int and double doesn't match because the division will always give you a double, so that's why we have to make use of the integer. So let's just go and remove this one from here. Let's just go and remove that, and that should be fine. I guess all of these has been added. So modulus over here, if you want to grab that one, so let's just copy this one from here and paste it below, and let's add the modulus sign over here as well, and this is of the modulus over here. And let's try to go and run our application, and you'll see that all of those are working perfectly fine. So that is all about the assignment operator. This is a simple assignment, and these are the compound assignment operator.
Next, we need to learn about the type test operator, which is the each return true if the object has a specific type, each not return true if the object does not have a specific type. And we also have the as used for typecasting. If the cast is valid, it throws a, if the cast is invalid, it throws a invalid error. So let us see practically how to make use of each not, as well as the type test operator. So let's go back to the operator over here, and at the end let's add the type test operator. The first example we are going to create is the dynamic variable over here. Let's say my var over here, which is of equals to, let's say hello world over here. So let's create a string type over here,
and now you will see this is a dynamic type. The typecasting hasn't been applied because we haven't make use of the var for the type inference over here. Now let's try to go and try to print out over here, and I'm going to print out the value each. Okay, so let's say what we have, my var. So let's say my var each a string is a string. So let's try to go and make use of the string interpolation over here, and in the string interpolation we'll say my var each string. So this will give us a true or the false depending on the type. So now here we have assigned a string for this dynamic variable my var, and this should actually give us the true over here. So let's try to go and try to run this one over here, and you will see that my var each string, which is of equals to the true, because the type we have assigned is a string type over here. So each, right, whether my var each a string or not, it will give you a true or false. And we also test it for the another one, which is of the print, and I'm going to say that the my var, right, so my var each not, my var each not is not, let's say it's a int, it's not, it's a int over here. So let's make use of the string interpolation over here. My var each not is not int. That should also give us the true because it's not a int type, right? So it should give us as a true as well. So let's say this will give us the true as well over here. If I go and rerun my application, I should also get my var each not int, so which is of the true because that is the string type over here. And let us also go and test some over here. Let's try to go and say we will make use of the object over here, object, and let's say my obj, my object, which is of equals to, I'll assign some integer value over here, and I'll just go and print out this one over here, and my obj each, I'm going to check if this is a integer int type, right? And here I'm going to make use of the string interpolation, and I'll just go and say the my obj over here each int is the type of the int. That should give us the true over here, right? So we can also make use of the if condition, because conditional conditions we haven't taken a look, but let me just show you a simple way of how we can check using the if condition as well over here. If my obj each the type or each of the int, then we are going to go and print out something over here. I'll go and say this each. Okay, so I need to add the string. I'll just go and say the my obj each int over here. Right, so let's just go and rerun this one over here, and my obj each int, that is what we are getting from the if condition. So it will be also really helpful to make use of each over here, each operator. That is what we have defined over here, right? Each returns a true if the object has a specific type. So for the type, to check a type, we can make use of each, right? Whether a particular object is whether it's a type of the int, string, map, list, and all of those stuff we can actually check out over here, or the custom object that we have created as well. And finally we have another one which is of the as, right? So let's just go and take a look over here. So I'll make use of the object over here, my obj2. So let's just go and my obj1 over here, object1, which is going to have the value of something like a 20 over here, and we can just go and cast it over here. So I'll just go and say the int, right? Int, I'll just say the int obj, which is of equals to the I'm going to make use of the my obj1 over here, right? And if you take a look now, it's giving me and some error over here. A value of that type object can't be assigned to a type of the int, because the int obj is a type is of the int, but my obj1 is a object type. So how I can assign it to the int? Because we have assigned a value of the int, it should be able to assign that back to our integer using the as over here, which is of the, I can go and say that is a as a int. So my obj as a int over here. And if we take a look, use for type casting, right? If the cast is invalid, it will throw an error. So if this cast doesn't succeed, then it's going to throw an error. That is what it's saying. If the cast is invalid, it throws a runtime error. So compile time, it doesn't give you an error, but in the runtime it will obviously throw an error. So exception handling or the error handling is really important if you are doing the typecasting using a as over here. And if I try to go and print over the int obj over here, it should run without any error over here, right? So it should print out that. But if I say that this is of the something like a string over here, and if I try to say the a b c d over here, and if I try to go and run this one, that will throw an error. Type string is not a subtype of the int. And let's test with the string of the 20 as well. Let's try to run that one, and you will still see that the type string is not a subtype of the int, right? So that's the error that's going to throw over here. So we need to make a proper exception handling once we are typecasting using as the as operator over here. Let me just go and remove that one over here. So now we have learned about the type test operator, which is each, not, as well as the as over here. And the next thing we need to learn about the conditional operators over here. And we have this particular conditional operator, condition, and then expression 1, and then the expression 2. This is basically a ternary operators over here. If we are going to check if the condition, put some condition and check for expression 1, expression 2, or we have the null aware of operator over here. We have the null aware operator, which is of this double question mark over here, right? This is a ternary operator, and this is a null aware operator. So let's just go and make use of the conditional operator. Let's go over here and let's add the conditional operator over here, and let's just go and make use of the int, and let's say COR score, which is of, let's say you have a score of 75 over here. And now I'll just go and make use of the string type string result, which is of equals to, let's check for the score if this expression, right? So what we have in the first place is the condition. So condition, check for the condition if the score, right? So we need to check if the score condition is, if the score is greater than or equals to the 60, right? Condition, if the score is greater than equals to the 60, that is our condition, and the expression will be, we are going to say the pass over here, right? Otherwise we are going to say the fail, or we'll just say try again, right? So AGAIN again. So just try again. Condition is if the score is greater than 60, then we are going to say, we are going to return a pass or assign a pass to our result. Otherwise, else part, right? If that is not the case, then otherwise add this try again to our result. And finally we are going to print out our result over here. And let's go and rerun our application, and we got the pass over condition over here, which is of the true because the score is greater than of the 60. So let's say we have the score of the 50 over here, and that should return us the try again using this particular ternary operator. So we have the condition, expression 1, and then the expression 2. And if this is the true case, always the first expression is going to be get executed. Otherwise, if that is the case is of the false, then the second expression is going to be executed. So let's just go and execute the run over here again, and you'll see that the try again is executed over here, assigned back to our result because it's the false. The condition is the false over here. And I hope you got the idea over here. Next we have the null aware operator over here. So let's go back over here and let's add the string which is of the nullable type, right? So which can have a I'll just go and say null null name, and for now we are going to assign a value as a null to that the null name over here, and we are going to say the string, right? And I'll just go and say displa or display name, and with this particular display name I'm going to check for the null name. So null name, if the null name is the null, right? So if that is the null aware, if it is null, then go and give me something like a guest over here. So if this is null name is of the null, if it is null, then go and use this one. If it is not null, then go and make use of this one and assign it back to the display. So here we are going to print out this condition over here, which is of the display name, and we are going to print out that one. So since we have the null name as the default values of the null, then it's going to give us this guest over here, which is going to assign it back to the display name, and that is what we are going to print out over here. We'll go and see that this is a guest. So if that is of the null aware operator, if this is a null aware operator, if it is of the null, then just go and assign the guest value back to the display over here. And I'll just go and say this is the null or nullable string over here. So this is a nullable string over here, and the condition will be like the if the null name is null, right? So if the null name is null, then we are going to say then use or return the guest over here, right? So GUEST guest over here, that's what it's going to do over here. That's a simple case that we have defined over here. So now we learn about the ternary operator, as well as we have learned about the null aware operator. Next we will learn about the cascade notation, right? So we will see the double dot over here, allow you to perform a sequence of operations on the same object using the cascade notation. So you can just dot and access the or perform some other sequence of operation on the same object instead of creating a next line, and so on. So let's just go back to our operator, and let's just go and add that one over here, conditional operator. And let me just create a list over here. So let's just go and say the list, right? And in the list, the type I'm going to define is the int type, right? So generic type. Don't worry about it, we'll learn it in the later stage, but for now let's create a list or the type is of the int, right? And I'll just go and say the nums over here, and which will be of equals to the empty list over here. So let's create the empty list or the array over here, And now if I want to add the num or the nums over here, so nums dot, and I can access the add over here, and I can just go and say the 10, and if I want I have to go and add it again, the 20 over here, right? So now I have to add and add. So what we can actually do over here is, instead of using this type, let me just go and add the list of the int type as well over here, and I'll just call this one as the numbers numbers, which will be of the empty list over here. And now I can make use of the numbers over here, numbers, or instead of using that numbers, I can, instead of terminating the expression over here, I can just go and make use of the cascade notation dot dot, and I can access the add over here. I'll just go and say the 10. Instead of closing it here again, I'm going to say the dot dot notation or the cascade notation, and I'm going to add over here, and that is of the 20. And I can also go and say dot dot and add all, right? I can call the another function, and I'm going to add the nums over there as well, and then I'm going to finally go and I'll go and close it over here. Now this contains all of those, so let's say this is of the 100 and 200 over here, right? And I can just go and print out our numbers, and I guess the okay, I need to actually go and make use of the for each to print that one. Don't worry about that. So for each over here, or the numbers, right? So we have the numbers dot the for each over here, and then the action, we have the e, and let's just go and print out that, which is of the e as well over here. So let's just go and close it over here, and let's try to go and run this one over here. Now you will see that 10, 20, 100 and 200 as well. That is what we have added over here. So this is the not the conditional operator. So let's just go and say this is of the cascade notation, right? So that's what we are doing to do over here. This is of the cascade notation, not the conditional operator. So I hope you got the idea how we can make use of cascade notation, and we can also do that in our custom object as well. So I guess we are going to create the, don't worry about this, we are going to create a class person, and here I'm going to say the person has a string type of the name, and also it has the let's say int type over here, which is of the nullable, and let's say the age over here. And I'm going to go and have one more function, void, let's say the grid over here, and in the grid I'm going to print out our hello, right? Hello, my name is dollar string interpolation name, and I am, that's the age that we have defined, years old over here. Let's just go and close this one over here. Now using this person, we can actually create our own person is of the person over here, which is of equals to the person, and for this person we can actually go and make use of the cascade notation, which is of the dot dot, and I can access the name as well. Name will be of equals to, let's say Richard over here, RCH, right? ARD Richard over here, and instead of closing it I can just go and say the dot dot again, and then also get age of equals to, let's say 40, and then finally I can go and call the grid as well over here, right? So that's how we are going to make use of this one. Finally I can just go and print out the let's say our person, so PR person over Yeah, that's what we are going to do. And let's go and try to run this one. That's an object over here actually, right? So it's an instance of the person over here. So I hope you got the idea how we can make use of the cascade notation. We can do that in our custom object as well. Let us go back to the readme file, and next we need to learn about the null safety in the Dart. So the explanation over here, null safety is a major feature introduced in the Dart 2.12. So it was introduced on the Dart 2.12 over here, that helps you to write more robust code by preventing a null reference error, right? So the null reference error was previously also known as a $1 billion error as well, right? Because the null error in the runtime caused a lot of the havoc in the Java world previously, right? If you remember, or if you have learned about the Java previously, you should be aware of that one, when there was no support for the null check, right? So, or the null safety at that time. So now in the Dart 2.12 and above, we have the Dart null safety. So the understanding the nullability over here, which is the question mark over here, by default all types in the Dart are the non-nullable. By default all Dart types are the non-nullable, which means that you cannot have assign a null value to any of the object. Like if you create a variable a in type of the a, you cannot assign a null value to it. To make a type nullable, so if you want to make that particular type a nullable, append a question mark to its name. So in the variable name we need to assign that one over here, right? So let's just go and take a look how we can actually go and create or make use of that practically. And before we move on, that null assertion operator, which is of the explanation mark, I guess, tells Dart that you are sure a nullable expression is not null at that point, which basically means that risk is there, right? You are saying that okay, at that point this is not going to be null. So if called a null, then it's going to throw in runtime error for you, or the runtime exception. If the variable is null, when you use this bang operator or explanation mark, right, this is a bang operator, it will throw in runtime error. So I just mentioned you that use it in your own rigs, right? It's really not a good practice to actually make use of this bang operator or the explanation mark. Basically we should properly handle it using the null operator, nullability. We can also make use of the let initialization using a let keyword, allow you to declare a non-nullable variable that will be initialized later but before its first use. So using the let keyword, what we can do is we can create a non-nullable variable that will be initialized on the later part. Maybe once you receive a variable from the database or you get a value from the API, you will assign that before you use it, right? So before you use it for the first used. Required keyword is also a named parameter. Okay, so first let's just go and make use of the null safety over here. Let's create the one new file over here, and we'll call this one as the null safety over here. Let's go and create the void over here, and this will be of the void main, right? So let's create the main function over here, and in this particular main function we are going to create the let's create the variable of the var, and I'll call this one as the nullable name, right, which is of equal, so I'm just going to say the Bob over here. So this is of the nullable name. I'm going to print out that, and I'll go and say this is the LLABL nullable name, right? Nullable name, which will be of the we have the nullable name over here. Let's try to go and close it over here, and let's try to run this one. We should get a nullable name each of the bob, right? And then if I try to go and assign something like the nullable, which will be of equals to the null over here, not the nil, it should be of the null. And you will see that a value type null can't be assigned to a variable type of the string, and this is a string and it's non-nullable. So by default all of the type that we have over here is a non-nullable type. So let me just go and say this is the string over here. So all this type is actually non-nullable, which basically means that you can't assign a null value over there. So that's what we have learned over here. So let's go back over here, and what I will do is let's just go and say this is of the non-nullable, right? So let's just go and say the non-nullable over here as well. And now let's go and create the nullable over here. So string, and the type nullable type over here, you see nullable, nullable, right? Sorry, not nullable, nu. Okay, so this is of the nullable nullable name, and I can assign a null value over here now, and I'm going to print this one as the nullable name over here, right? And let's just try to go and print out this one over here. We'll see that now we can assign a value of the null. So this is the question mark that we have to assign to a type, and if you remove that, it's the non-nullable type. By default it's always the non-nullable type. If you want to make it a nullable, then we need to add the question mark over here. That is what we are trying to say over here, right? So understanding a nullable, by default all types is under dot are non-nullable, right? If you want to make a type unnullable, then we need to add this particular question mark, like example string int, right? Any object that you want to create a nullable, then we need to assign a question mark over there in this way. And now the next one is about the null assertion operator. So let's go down over here and let's create the function, the string which returns the null, and I'll just going to get the null, or the get null string over here, and it's going to take some boolean parameter over here, bool should return the null. So should it return a null boolean, right? And this is going to return us the should return null if it is of true, the ternary operator. Then if should return null if it is true, then we are going to go and say the hello, or let's say a hello over here. Otherwise we are going to return the null over here, right? So that is what we are going to return over here. So now let's just go back over here and let's try to see how we can make use of those. So here I'm going to say the string, and this is going to return us. Okay, so let me just try to show you. Maybe null. So this may be a null, right? So I'm going to say the get the null string over here, and get the null string true over here, and then we are going to say that you'll see an error. That's a string, a value of string nullable. String can't be assigned to a variable type of string. We need to also make this one as a nullable now, and here I'm going to say this is maybe, right? So may be null. So we'll just go and say the let's print out our maybe null over here. Let's try to go and run this one over here, and we got hello. Okay, so it should be actually the opposite over here. So it's going to return a null, otherwise it's going to just go and say the hello over here. And if I go and run this one, now you'll see that it's going to return us the null over here, right? So that is what we are grabbing over here. It's going to return us the null. and let's try to go and check for the condition as well over here. So I'm just going to make the simple condition. If the may be null, if may be null, not equals to null, not equals to null. If it is not null, then we are going to go and print out something over here. I'll just go and say the my name is not null, or you can do something over here, right? So let's just go and close it over here. Now if I go and return this one, okay, so here I'll just go and say the false over here. Let's go and rerun this one over here, and so it's going to execute my name is not null. So that is what my maybe null is not null. So right, it's going to return a hello from here. And now finally let us go and make use of this particular bang operator. And for that case, what I will do over here is I'll just go and say the string maybe and I'll just go and call the get the null string, and it should return a true from here. Then that's going to return us the okay, so here we are, the option is to make use of the nullable type. Otherwise, the next thing that we can do over here is use that particular bang operator over here, right? So the value of the okay, so here I'm going to print out may be over here. So what do you think that we are going to get it over here, right? What do you think? So if I go and run, right, you will see that it throws an unhandled exception. So in the runtime we are going to get an exception because you mentioned that it's not going to be null, right? So the bang operator that you have mentioned, tell the data that you are sure. So you are sure that it's not going to be null, then you add that particular bang operator. If the variable is null, when you use that particular bang operator, it will throw a runtime error. That's what we are seeing over here. If this is going to return as the null, then go and throw a runtime exception. So in this case, we have to make use of the proper exception handling if you want to make use of this particular bang operator. So it's not always safe to make use of the bang operator unless you are sure that it's not going to be a null. At the time only use this particular operator, otherwise we should always make use of the null away over here. So let's just go and add this one over here, let initialization, right? So let's see how we can make use of the let initialization. So for this one, let's go and create the new class over here. Don't worry about the class, we'll learn it in the later stage. So let's create a class of the user, and let me create the let variable of the string type, which is of the name over here. And using this let, I'll just go and let's go and have the void over here. So let's say a void function, and I'll just go and say the init name over here, and I'm going to pass in the variable name of, let's say, our value, and we are going to assign that back to our name over here. So name will be of equals to the value over here. And let's go and also have the getter over here, get the name over here, that is going to return us our this dot the name over here. So that's going to return us the name. So I'll just go and say the get the name over here. And now if I go back over here, and let's try to go and make use of that one. So first we are going to create the user which is of equals to the user. Let's create the instance of that. Don't worry about this one for now, later we'll learn about it. And now I can just go and say the user dot, and I have the get the name over here, right? So get name, and this is a function, so I need to go and grab that one. So let's just go and say the uh, final, and I'm going to say the n1, which is of equal to the user that, and print that particular n1 over here. And let's try to go and run this one. Let's see what we are going to get. And now okay, so I guess we have somewhere error over here. I guess that's over here, right? So let's try to go and comment out this one, or you can make use of the try catch over here. So don't worry about it. So we'll learn about that on the later stage. For now, let's just go and prevent that particular error happening over here. And let's try to run this one, and you will see that the unhandled exception, late initialization error, field name has not been initialized. So basically saying that the late name has not been initialized. So if I remove this one, right, so it's going to ask me that it's non-nullable and you must initialize this one. You should create a constructor, or you can have to go and assign the value. But in some cases that you don't have to go and assign a value or create a constructor once you create that particular variable, right? You may have some business cases where you want to initialize it on the later point before you access that particular value, right? So now what we have to do is, here once we use the user, so I had the user dot, and I can just go and set that particular name, so init name, and I'm just going to say that the initialize that particular name, and now it should go and run that one. And okay, so string has no instance method call. So where is that? Let's just go and say that return the get the name. Okay, so get, so string to the string, it's going to return as the string, and this is not a function now, right? So expression doesn't evaluate to a function, so it can't be invoked. So it's not a function actually. So we can just go and say that's going to return as it's the getter, right? So it's going to get that particular value for us. Now let's just try to go and run this one. You'll see that it returns as the Alex. So I hope you got the idea how we can make use of the late keyword over here to initialize the value at the later point, not at the time once you create that particular variable. So if you have a requirement where you don't want to create, or where you don't want to assign a value at the time of the variable creation, then you can make use of the late keyword over here. Let's go back over here, and we also have learned about the late. Finally, I guess we have the required keyword. So the required keyword, which is used for the named parameter. So named parameters in a function are optional by default. The required keyword focus on the named parameter to be provided. This we should actually learn in the time once we are learning the function. For now, let us just try to learn some basic concept for the required keyword in the named parameter, right? So this will be on the later stage. We will learn more about it on the later stage. So let's just go back to our null safety over here, and in the null safety, let us try to go and learn about the required keyword. So let's just go and add our statement over here, a print statement over here, and let's just go and have something like let's create a function. The first thing, I guess we will create a function for this one, because without a function we can't test the required keyword. So here we are going to create something like a void, and I'm going to say grid over here, right? And in the grid function we are going to take some parameters. So usually we write something like this over here, string name or the value over here. But in case we want a named parameter, then we have to add it inside the curly brace over here. And once we add inside the curly brace, we have to mark this one as the required over here. So required, and this is the type is of the string, right? Required type is of the string. Then we are going to do something like from here, or let's just go and print out from here, and I'll just go and say the okay, so here I need a string hello, and then the dollar sign of the value that we are passing in. And now once we have this particular required parameter for our function, it's usually used in the class constructor or in the functions. But now you don't have to worry about the classes and the functions. We will learn it at the later stage. For now, let's see how we can make use of the this particular required keyword over here. So let's call this one a function that we have the okay, so grid over here, and in the grid we have the required parameter, which is of the value. So this is the named parameter. All right, so this is a named parameter. Once we have the required keyword, this becomes a named parameter in a function. So now we can say a value or a name, access it by the name. So let's say I can say this is of the name as well, and using this name, now you'll see that we got an error. I have to define this one as a name. So name, I can just go and save this one over here. That's going to fix that particular error. So this is a simple the way of accessing or making use of the required keyword, but we'll learn this more in once we learn about the functions. And the next thing that we need to learn about is the type conversion over here. And if you take a look into the explanation over here, type conversion or the typecasting involves changing the value from one data type to the another type. So here we will learn how we can change the data type from and to, let's say from int to the double, or from double to the int, right? So let us try to see how we can do in practically. So let's just go back to our module 2, and let's create the new file over here, and let's call this one as the type conversion dot the dot over here, and let's create our main method over here, or the main function. So let's say our void and then the main over here, and in this particular main let's add our numeric type conversion. First we'll learn about the numeric type conversion. So the int, and I'll just go say my int, which will be of equals to, let's say, a 10 over here, and I'll also create the double over here, double, and let's say my doub double, which will be of equals to the 20.5 over here. Now let us try to see how we can convert. So first thing I want to do is from int to the doub double, from int to the double type conversion. So let's say we have the doub double, right? So I'll say int to let's say into doub double over here, and we will do from my int that we have, which is a type is of the int. If I try to set it over here, it's a value int can't be assigned to a variable type of the double. So this is a double type and this is of the int type, so it can't be assigned. So what we'll do is I'll just go and say dot over here, and I'll convert it to the double over here. So there is a built-in method that we can use from int to the double. So now it can be converted. Next we'll learn about the, so let's just go and try to print this one, right? And like this. So let's just go and print out over here, and in the print I'm going to say the int, or the int to doub double over here, and dollar I'm going to print the int into double, right? So int to the double that we just saw over here, and let's just go and close it over here, and let's just go and add the another one, which will be from the double doub double to the int over here, and I'll say the int and doub double to the int over here, which will be of equals to the my double that we have, right? So if I go and try to assign that, it's an error set saying that the double can't be assigned to the variable type of the int. So I'll just go and do the type conversion to int over here. That should be good enough, and I can just copy this from here and paste it below over here. So this will be from the double to the int over here, and we just need to print out this one. So the built-in method that we can use to convert from int to the double. And now let's just go back to the readme file. So int and double, right? So we just saw this, and now let's just go back to our string to number conversion. Let's see how we can do this string convert. String dot parse in the string converts a string to an integer, and double dot parse converts a string to the double, right? And we also have the try parse and double dot in the try parse as well as the double dot the try parse. Safer alternative that returns null if the string can't be parsed. So if you want, then this is a safer option instead of this one. So let's go back to our type conversion over here, and let's try to make use of our string to the numbers conversion over here. Let's just go and add that one over here, and let's say we have a string, and the string is of the int string over here, which will be of the value of, let's say we need to have a string which is of the number over here, and this is a string. I guess that should be of the string. And now let's try to have the another one which is of the string type as well, right? That is the doub double string, and then that will be of equals to, let's say we have something like 40 or the 45 dot the 67, and that's our string representation of double. And let's have the one more type of the string that will be of the invalid number. And let's just go and, or not invalid number, let's say invalid string over here, and we have something like ABC over here. And let's try to do a type conversion over here, and if I go and say the int parse int parse str string to int. So it's a bit long, I guess that should be fine. In dot the, I can make use of the parse. So let's just go and parse, and the source is of the int string that we have defined, and let's just go and close it over here. And let's try to print out this one over here. So print, we have the parse parse string to int over here, and let's try to go and run this one. You'll see that we have this 1 2 3 4, that is what we have. And similarly we can do the same thing for the double, right? So let's just go and pass it to the double. So double over here, and I guess the double over here, sorry for that. So double, and with this particular double, let's go and pass double to the double, not the parse the string, sorry, parse the string to, we have double over here, and just go and say we have the double dot the parse over here, and pass in the string that we have. This is the one that we need to pass in, and just go and try to print out this one over here. And once I say the parse the double parse, what was that? Parse string to the double. So let's just go and print out this one over here. Let me just go and run this one more time, and you see that we got the correct type conversion from string to the double over here. And let's try to parse this one, right? So we have the invalid string. So let's say you have some string that can't be converted to the string or the double over here. So let's just go and try to make use of this one over here. Just copy this and I'm going to paste it below, and I'm going to add it as a 1, and we are going to use the invalid this one. We will try to parse it to this int over here, and I'm going to print out this one over here. Let's try to see what went wrong over here, right? So let's just go and rerun the program. It should throw an exception, unhandled exception, format exception, invalid, right? So invalid radix 10 number, right? So that's the character actually, but right, which can't be passed to the integer over here, and we saw it will throw an exception. So at the runtime, if you try to do this one, your application will crash, right? So what we can do over here, instead of doing that, I will just go and make use of the try parse over here, and this try parse is going to return a nullable type. So I have to make this one as a nullable type over here, and if I go and try to run this one, it will give me a null, and there will be no exception, right? So it's not going to throw an exception, or there will be no application crashing if you make use of the try parse. If you are not sure that whether that particular string will be a number, or it may not be a number, it may sometimes return a different value, like let's say null or an empty string, right? And at that time it will not be able to pass that correctly, so it will throw an exception at the runtime. So there will be a runtime exception, so you need to make sure you use a proper try catch or exception handling mechanism over here. But if you want to be safe, and if you don't want to have a try catch or exception handling, then you can just make use of the try parse, which will return either a null or the converted value over here. The same thing goes with our double as well. So if I just copy this and try to paste it below over here, just make use of the try parse and pass in the invalid string over here, and this should be of the nullable type. So let's just go and copy this, and okay, so here it should be of the 1. Just copy this and paste it over here. If I go and run that one, that should give us the null over here. This is the safest way to do the type conversion if you make use of the try parse over here. And next, let's go back over here. We saw how we can make use of the parse, double that parse, as well as the try parse over here. And I guess the next thing that we can do is make use of the toString over here, which we are going to convert the number to a string. So previously we saw how we can convert the string to a number, and now let's see how we can convert the number back to the string over here. So which we will be using a toString over here. So let's just go back to our type conversion over here, and let's create some variable over here, and let me just add a comment over here, and that's going to be of the number to a string conversion over here. First, I'll create a number of int, and let's say num to a string over here, and that's we are going to assign a value of, let's say, 100, and we also have the another one which will be of the double over here, and this will be of the num, I guess we'll just say num to the num to string and double double over here. And I'll just go and say this is of the 1 to let's say 1 to 3 dot the 52 over here, and I'll just make this one as an int over here. Now we have the two number type, one is of the int and another one is of the double. Let's try to see how we can make use of the string conversion for this one. So we have the string over here, string type. I'll just go and say the into string, right? And then we have the number num to string int over here, and if I try to assign that, it's going to give an error because the value int can't be assigned to a variable type of a string over here. And what I can do is I can just go and call the toString over here, and you will see that we got that as a string over here. And now I can just go and print out that to be of the int to our string over here, int to our string over here, right? So that's we can do over here. And similarly I can do doub double to the string over here, and that will be of the num to double over here, num to string double, and then I have to do the same thing, which is of the dot to string over here, and just go and print out our what we have is the double to the string over here. Let's just go and run this one over here, and we should see that we got the converted value back, which is of the string. The type is of the string over here. And I hope you got the idea how we can use the type conversion, which is for the conversion of one type to the another type, which is also a type casting. And we can make converting between the numeric type from int to the double and double to the int, as well as converting our string type to the number type, and also the number type to the string. And that's all. I think we have completed all of our the module 2 over here, and in this module we learn a lot of these steps in our Dart programming language.